In the last video, we walked through the 5 phases of creating a presentation. They were Phase 1, clarify purpose and scope. Phase 2, research and curate sources. Phase 3, structure and messaging. Phase 4, visual and verbal presentation. And Phase 5, review and refine. And we also delved deeper into the how-tos of Phase 1, as well as some of the very easy research options. In this video, we're going to look at advanced research techniques using AI tools. We're also going to cover how-tos for fact-checking with AI. After all, AI sometimes hallucinates, so we need to make sure that the sources an AI tool recommends are legit. Now, obviously, you can do research the old-fashioned way using Google, browsing into magazines, and digging into trade journals, or even heading for the library. If you already have solid material for some subtopics, just add these sources to your Word doc. But I like to bring in NotebookLM at this point. It helps me find peer-reviewed journals, policy documents, and case studies, and it often sparks ideas that I would not have found on my own. For this demo of NotebookLM, I chose the first subtopic from our Word document, AI for Diagnosis, to keep the demo short and focused. This subtopic covers how tools like DeepMind or IBM Watson analyze scans to detect things like cancer or diabetic eye disease. To present this well, we need more depth, more examples, context, and evidence. So to start my research, I created a new notebook in NotebookLM. The first screen to pop up is then Add Sources. I click on Discover Sources button. Now it wants to know what I'm interested in. I don't just type the title in the box. I entered the full idea, including the notes and examples from my worksheet. Normally, I would even expand this and bring my own thoughts in about what I want to cover in this subtopic, but for our purposes here, this is going to suffice. Then I submitted the prompt. After a while, I'm speeding this video up right now. Notebook shows me a list of sources. I can check each one of them by clicking on the diagonal arrow that will open this source in a new window. If I like the source, I can keep it by leaving it checked. If I don't, I just uncheck it. Then I click Import, and NotebookLM will import the selected sources into my new notebook. Since this can take quite a while, I'm going to spare you the time and just continue with our demo where I had the sources already loaded. That's how NotebookLM pulled together the list of sources you see on the left. Now comes the next step, testing those sources. Are they reliable? Are they up to date? Do they actually support what I want to say? In today's world, you can't just accept any source at face value. You have to give it your personal stamp of approval. How I test sources really depends on the topic, and everyone's approach will be a little different. If the topic is familiar and I already know what's reputable, I might just scan through to see if there's anything new I want to include. In those cases, I use tools like NotebookLM, more to confirm than to discover. But in this case, AI in healthcare, I'm in unfamiliar territory. I don't know the trusted sources, and I need more help separating the solid research from the fluff. So for this one, I rely on NotebookLM much more heavily, and that means more careful, hands-on source testing. Let's take a closer look at some of the sources listed in the left panel. Whenever you're interested in a source, you can just hover over it to get a brief description, and if you want to explore it further, click on it. NotebookLM will open it in a new window so you can examine it more closely. NotebookLM gives you a brief summary of what's in it so you can quickly decide whether it's worth exploring further. In this case, it shows me this is an official U.S. government website, thanks to the .gov domain. That's a really helpful trust signal, especially when you're dealing with health-related information. Now, if you click on this little right arrow, this will open the full website in a new tab. And here's the full source, opened in a new browser tab. Even though it's hosted on a government site, you'll notice a disclaimer at the top. Access does not automatically mean endorsement. That's a good reminder to read critically, even when the source looks official. I continued checking sources one by one, and then I came across this one, AI in Healthcare, Medium. I'd never heard of it before, so I clicked on it to see what NotebookLM could tell me. But when I read the summary, I really couldn't make much sense of it. It mentioned case studies and blog posts, but it wasn't clear who wrote them or how credible they were. That's a sign that more checking is needed. So let me show you one way I like to fact check on familiar sources. I use a tool called Perplexity to dig a little deeper. After opening the Medium website, I take a quick look, and honestly, it didn't feel very trustworthy. It looked more like a marketing blog than a reliable research source, so just to be sure, I decided to dig deeper. I copied the link to my clipboard because this is one of those sources that raised a red flag. I wanted to fact check it before using anything from it in my presentation. So then I went over to Perplexity, pasted the link, and simply asked, is this a reliable, fact-based source? It came back with a pretty extensive answer. Turns out Medium is based in India and operates as a biotechnology company and educational organization. They specialize in things like genomics, data analysis, and health science training. Perplexity explained that the articles in their AI and healthcare section focus on widely recognized use cases of AI implementation, featuring familiar names like Google's DeepMind, IBM Watson, and the Mayo Clinic. The content is written in an informative, explanatory style, and it's mostly summaries of successful implementation. That gave me a bit more context, and so far, no red flags jumped out at me. And then Perplexity even gave me a summary table, which I really appreciate. It helps cut through the noise quickly. Under factual accuracy, it says the content is generally fact-based and aligns with known industry cases. If I still had doubts, I could even click on the little numbered links right here to see which sources Perplexity used to come to that conclusion. It also evaluated source transparency, telling me the team's credentials are listed, but the articles themselves do not include direct citations, which is important to know if you're planning to rely heavily on the information. Peer review? No. It's not peer-reviewed. But honestly, I didn't expect that, since this isn't a scientific journal. It's more of a professional blog or industry publication. And then, under intended audience, it says the content is geared toward students, professionals, and the general public interested in health AI. It's meant to educate, not publish new research. Now, here's the conclusion Perplexity gave me about the site. It says Medium's AI in Healthcare section is generally reliable, fact-based educational resource, especially for introductory learning and general awareness. It summarizes well-known use cases of AI in medicine, which is exactly what I need at this stage of my research. But it also gives me a heads up. This is not a substitute for peer-reviewed scientific literature. There are no direct citations within the articles, and it's not peer-reviewed, which means it's not a source I lean on alone for academic or clinical decisions. In my case, I decided it's a decent starting point, as long as I back it up with stronger, more credible sources on the same topic. That's why I like using Perplexity. It gives me a quick, structured evaluation, so I can decide at a glance whether to move forward with a source or dig deeper before I trust it. Now, here's another option, more extensive, but also more time-consuming. This government site offers a solid method for evaluating online health information. It gives you 13 questions to ask whenever you're checking the reliability of a source. The questions are pretty generic, but they're designed to help you think critically about where your information is coming from. Now, would I want to run through all 13 of these every time I ask ChatGPT something? Probably not. I'd never get anything done. But when accuracy really matters, this method can be worth the effort. It's like a backup tool for when you need rock-solid sources. Going through all 13 questions manually would be tedious, and let's be honest, I'd probably never finish. So I turned to Claude for help. I gave it a clear role. You're an expert at fact-finding. Then linked the .gov site with the evaluation questions. I asked it to apply these directly to WebMD. Since Claude can browse the web more freely than ChatGPT, it's a great choice for this kind of task. And as you can see, it actually pulls the questions from the site, gathers info from WebMD, and walks through each step, explaining exactly what it's doing along the way. Very handy when you need deeper validation without doing all the digging yourself. Here's something I really appreciate. Claude doesn't just give you an answer. It also shows you where that answer came from. See this little drop-down? It says 10 results, and when you click it, Claude reveals the sources it pulled from. Now in this case, you'll notice solid government sites like NIH and Medicine Plus, and even a legal site focused on elder health. So if you want, you can actually go to those sites yourself and double-check the info. It's a great way to build confidence in what the AI is telling you, especially for health-related topics. For example, let's just pick resources for public libraries and click on them to get to that site. Then ask, do I trust this? Does it feel credible? And honestly, yes, it's a lot of work. But right now, there's still no fast, foolproof way to fact-check AI. Especially when it comes to health and medicine, I'd rather take the time to be sure. For other topics, maybe not as critical. In my experience, the AI has actually done a great job pulling from solid sources. But it's good to know that behind the scenes, they're putting more effort into surfacing trustworthy content from the start. And here's what I really like. Claude doesn't just give you a verdict, it walks you through its reasoning. After gathering the information, it clearly says, now I'll evaluate WebMD using the NIH's health information criteria. Then it goes one by one through the questions from the government site, answering each based on what it found. Now this step-by-step breakdown gives you transparency. You can see how it reached its conclusion, not just what they are. For example, here's question 1. Who runs the website? Claude tells me WebMD is an American corporation that's been around since 1998. That alone gives me some confidence. This isn't some fly-by-night operation. The question 2, what are the credentials of the people creating the content? Well, turns out WebMD has a whole network of physicians and medical experts contributing, and each article is reviewed by a physician editor before it goes live. Claude is doing exactly what I need here, breaking things down so I can decide whether I trust the source. Now remember, what I'm doing here is fact-checking WebMD using the NIH's evaluation criteria. So when Claude starts citing WebMD itself as a source, that's a red flag. I don't want to know what WebMD says about WebMD. I want to know what independent sources say. But here's the good news. That's easy to fix. All I have to do is adjust the prompt. For example, I could say, do not include any sources from WebMD itself. That way, Claude only pulls from third-party sites, giving me a more objective picture of how trustworthy WebMD really is. Now, it's all about being specific with your instructions. So that wraps up the research and fact-checking phase. At this point, I've got a solid foundation, reliable sources, a clear worksheet, and AI assistance that helps me stay focused, organized, and accurate. And while fact-checking, especially in healthcare, takes time, it's well worth it. The good news is, tools like ChatGPT and Claude can take on the heavy lifting as long as we guide them with the right prompts. Now that the research is in place, we're ready to move into the next phase, shaping it into a compelling presentation. I'll walk you through that next step in an upcoming video. Stay tuned.